Soul leaving the body. It looked like smoke, except it wasn't. It curled over the bed in 3 luminous wisps, faint but undeniable, suspended above the body of a woman named Nadine Baraduc, who had just taken her final breath. Her husband, Hippolyte, a French physician and parapsychologist, waited in the shadows for this moment with the camera already in place. When it came, he pressed the shutter, and what he claimed to capture that night in 1907 would horrify the skeptics and haunt the faithful. The photographic evidence of a human soul escaping the body. Baraduc wasn't a charlatan, or at least he didn't think he was. A respected doctor at Paris's Salpêtrière hospital, he'd spent years attempting to photograph what no lens had ever seen. Thought, emotion, and spirit. What he called the âme humaine. While the 19th century was bursting with spirit mediums and double exposures, Baraduc's approach was clinical, scientific. He believed the soul radiated a vital fluid, a kind of human radioactivity that could be captured by the photographic plate itself. No camera, no light source, just the body, the darkness, and the plate. What emerged were abstract swirls, streaks, and misty clouds. Baraduc insisted these were not flaws or accidents, but visible traces of invisible forces. However, it was Nadine who would become his most terrifying subject. She'd grown ill, and Baraduc, ever the scientist, prepared for the inevitable. 20 minutes after her death, he exposed the first plate. 3 ghost-like clouds hovered over her body. 15 minutes later, he exposed another. The clouds had merged into a single glowing sphere. Then, nearly an hour after death, he took a final photo. The larger cloud had moved, drifting away from the bed into the next room. He claimed it brought with it a sudden chill. The soul had left the body, and he had the pictures to prove it. To believers, Baraduc's images were sacred relics. To skeptics, they were photographic errors, pinholes in camera bellows. Long exposures gone wrong, wishful thinking developed in silver halide. But the images refused to be forgotten. Seen today, they resemble fog or starscapes, or the blur of breath on cold glass. But knowing the story behind them, knowing Baraduc's wife lay still beneath the frame, makes them feel unspeakably eerie. And yet these photos also embody a paradox. Baraduc, the scientist, used tools of hard material science, plates, emulsions, exposure times, to capture something immaterial. He didn't want to fake a ghost. He wanted to trap the soul's footprint, to prove that even the most fleeting aspects of human existence left a trace. Whether he succeeded or not remains a matter of belief. But the image, faint, clouded, and haunting, still lingers, like something watching us back. The Bonilla observation. In 1883, a lone astronomer in Mexico almost photographed the end of the world. Billions of tons of a shattered comet streaming past our planet, and no one realized it. That August morning, Jose Bonilla set up his telescope at Zacatecas Observatory. As he focused on the sun, something dark flickered across his view. Then another and another. Within minutes, hundreds of shadowy shapes darted past, some in clusters of 20 or more. They moved from west to east, sharp silhouettes against the blazing disk. Bonilla scrambled to capture them on fragile and photographic plates. By the time it was over, he'd counted 447. Later estimates suggest thousands more went unseen. At the time, he could not know what he had witnessed, only that it felt terrifyingly out of place. 2 years later, his findings appeared in the French journal Astronomie. Scientists struggled to explain them. Birds, dust, insects, anything but what the photographs seemed to show. For more than a century, UFO enthusiasts seized on the mystery as proof of visitors from another world. But the truth may be far more horrifying. In 2011, astronomer Hector Manterola and colleagues at Mexico's National Autonomous University re-examined Bonilla's forgotten plates. Their conclusion: the dark blurs weren't birds or spacecraft. They were fragments of a massive comet, ripped apart by the sun and passing terrifyingly close to Earth. By comparing Bonilla's view with what others didn't see, the team realized something unsettling. The fragments flew so near that only observers in a narrow band around Zacatecas would have seen them cross the sun. They likely passed roughly 350 to 5,000 miles above Earth, within the range of today's low Earth orbit satellites. Each fragment was massive, between 160 and 2,600 feet across. For comparison, the Tunguska meteoroid that flattened 80 million trees in Siberia was just 160 feet wide. Bonilla had recorded hundreds. Manterola calculated there were more than 3,000 in total. Together, their mass rivaled Halley's Comet. The impact would have unleashed the energy of millions of Hiroshima bombs, an extinction-level barrage that would have ended civilization. Even a single mid-sized fragment could have released tens of megatons, around 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. However, that week's Perseids were modest, not an exceptional display. No firestorms lit the skies. The fragments, if Manterola's hypothesis is right, passed silently overhead and vanished, leaving only Bonilla's ghostly photographs. Some astronomers remain skeptical, troubled by the lack of unusual meteor activity that should have accompanied such a large comet. Could Bonilla have seen a trick of the light? Birds, insects, or dust near the telescope? Or something stranger still? Today, Bonilla's photos sit in dusty archives, blurry and inconclusive, often dismissed as the first photos of UFOs. But maybe there's something worse. Maybe they're a record, not of what visited us, but what almost ended us. First photo of ball lightning. It appears without warning, silent, seething, a pale fireball drifting above the River Tyne. And just before it vanished, the camera caught it. What Mr. Dunn photographed that night in 1892 may be the first real image of ball lightning. On July 17th, in the heart of Newcastle upon Tyne, Dunn and his son stood at their window during a violent thunderstorm. Lightning forked through the valley, but it wasn't the storm that held their gaze. It was a glowing sphere, 2 feet wide, moving as fast as a man could run. Dunn called to his son. A plate was loaded into the family's camera, and in the split second before the orb blinked out, the shutter snapped, not capturing lightning bolts, but a perfect floating sphere of light. The world's first photograph of a phenomenon many scientists said didn't exist. Ball lightning was long met with skepticism. Even Michael Faraday, the famed pioneer of electromagnetism, doubted it. Yet witnesses across centuries told another story. It was said to float through walls, to smash pews and windows inside an English church, to kill livestock in fields and sailors at sea, sometimes silently, sometimes with an explosion like a cannon. So what exactly did Dunn capture? That question is harder to answer than you'd think. The first publication of his photo is uncertain. It surfaces in an 1892 magazine of curiosities called The Gatherer. Then again in an 1894 French photography journal. But the image revealed more than the glowing orb. Strange fringes haloed the object. Odd blotches marked the plate. Analysts insisted these weren't developers' mistakes. Some claimed they were proof of an electromagnetic field. Light itself bent and burned into the emulsion. and if the photo is real, it fits with centuries of terrifying accounts. In 1753, Russian physicist Georg Richman was killed mid-experiment when a glowing sphere struck him in the head, leaving a red circle on his forehead. In 1809, 2 British sailors on the HMS Warren Hastings died, and one was injured after 3 balls of fire passed through them. Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, once watched a sphere pass through a church, grazing his grandfather's head. A fireball that can kill without warning, yet still escapes explanation. Some say it's vaporized silicon glowing in the air. Others claim it's microwave radiation trapped in a bubble. Still others argue it isn't real at all, just hallucinations from electromagnetic interference with the eyes or brain. But the done photograph exists. It's fixed in silver nitrate, a ghost caught on film. The orb about the tine left no scorch marks. It made no sound. It passed no judgment. It was there, and then it was gone. And perhaps that is what makes it frightening. Not what it did, but what it refused to explain. A mystery that, for one flicker of a second, allowed itself to be seen. The ghost of Katie King. One of the greatest scientists of the 19th century swore he touched a ghost, and he had the photographs to prove it. The figure was called Katie King. Pale, draped in a white gown, her face wrapped in gauze. And standing beside her, smiling faintly, hand on her shoulder, was Sir William Crookes, the man who discovered thallium, whose inventions laid the groundwork for X-rays, discovery of the electron, and even television. But was Crookes truly embracing the dead, or had one of the brightest minds in science been fooled by a teenage girl in disguise? Florence Cook was just 15 when she began holding seances in East London. She would be tied to a chair inside a wooden spirit cabinet. Then the curtains parted, and a new pale figure stepped into the room. The ghost of Katie King. She said she was the daughter of a pirate, and now a wandering spirit seeking redemption. Soon Katie materialized in full form, walking, breathing, even shaking hands with guests. If Florence was faking, how could she be both inside the cabinet and outside at once? Not everyone was convinced. At one seance, a skeptical lawyer named William Voigtman lunged forward and grabbed Katie by the wrist. She fought back, scratching, clawing like a living woman, before vanishing into the cabinet. When he tore the curtains open, there sat Florence, still bound to her chair. Her clothes, though, were rumpled, as if she'd changed in haste. The newspapers called it an exposure. Instead, it made Florence famous. In 1873, she invited William Crookes to investigate. He insisted on strict controls, seances in his own home, with his own family present. Florence agreed, and there, in that dimly lit parlor, Katie King returned. She allowed herself to be weighed, measured, even photographed, 55 times. Crookes swore he'd seen Florence and Katie together, side by side. He described differences: Katie's hair auburn, where Florence's was nearly black, her ears unpierced, where Florence's bore earrings. Lit by magnesium flashes, how clear could those differences really be? The photographs remain unsettling. In one, Crookes stands proudly beside Katie, her face hidden in gauze. In another, she looms near Florence's unconscious body. The most infamous shows Katie reflected in a mirror. Skeptics called it undeniable proof of trickery. And yet, Crookes never backed down. Until his death in 1919, he insisted Katie King was real, that Florence Cook was no deceiver, that science itself had touched the veil of the afterlife. Why would a man of such stature risk everything on a lie? Some said grief had blinded him. Crookes had lost a beloved brother. Others whispered something more scandalous, that he was entangled in an affair with the teenage medium, desire clouding reason as much as belief. Katie King's final act came in 1874. Kissing her on the forehead, she told Florence her mission was complete, then vanished forever. Florence's career faded. Crookes's reputation, remarkably, endured. He would later be knighted for his contributions to science. But the photographs remain, eerie, ambiguous relics of an age when science and superstition walked hand in hand. And perhaps the most chilling part of the Katie King affair isn't whether she was real. It's that no one, not even one of the greatest scientists of the 19th century, could ever be sure. Thought photography. In 1896, a retired French cavalry officer claimed he had done the impossible, captured a thought on film. One night, he pressed a cold photographic plate against his forehead, closed his eyes, and the next day developed an image of a hazy bottle. His name was Louis Darget, and he believed the mind could project its secrets onto glass. Darget called these strange results photographie fluidique, fluidic photographs of thought. He argued that the brain radiated invisible V-rays, short for vital rays, streaming from phosphorus in the skull like beams of light. A photographic plate, he insisted, could intercept them. To him, a thought wasn't just invisible activity. It was an image waiting to be fixed in silver salts. His most famous experiment involved his wife. He placed a photographic plate above her forehead as she slept. By morning, he rushed in with the developed plate, a blurred bird-shaped smear. In looping script, he labeled it l'aigle, the eagle, and declared it the first photograph of a dream. The plates themselves are uncanny. La première bouteille, the first bottle, looks like a vapor dissolving into darkness. The can resembles a spreading bruise. A sitter identified only as Monsieur H. supposedly produced a portrait of Beethoven while playing the piano. Under Darget's captions, smears of emulsion took on a strange authority, as if glimpses of an inner tribunal had been made visible. Darget wasn't alone. He collaborated with Hippolyte Baraduc, the Paris neurologist obsessed with the body's vital fluid. Together, they pressed light-sealed plates to skin, convinced that the swirls and vortices revealed invisible currents of thought. To them, these were not chemical accidents. They were evidence of the soul. But when scientists tested the claims, the mystery unraveled. Corpses produced no images until warmed by body temperature, when the same stains appeared. Heat, moisture, and poor chemistry explained the rest. What seemed like a revolution in neuroscience collapsed into a cautionary tale about how much we want to see our minds made visible. Yet Darget's photographs still unsettle. He failed as a scientist, but succeeded as an artist of unease. His photographs resemble X-rays of the unconscious. Clouds captured in miniature, even galaxies in the skull. They belong to a moment when science and superstition blurred, when the mind seemed as strange as the atom or the stars. Today, we map brains with fMRI scans, but the question Darget posed lingers. If thoughts could be photographed, what would we see? Evidence of truth, or the trace of a dream? Which of these 5 photos will stick with you after the video? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching Dark 5. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of this world and beyond.